lost my mom and my pops. I came to get down, I came to get down. So get out your seat and jump around. Jump around, jump around, jump around, jump around, jump around, jump around, jump up and get down.
Today on The Dadger, our guest needs no introduction, but we're going to give him one anyway. If you've ever watched Wisconsin football in the early 2000s, you know the name Anthony Davis. Anthony lit up Camp Randall with his explosive speed, relentless drive, and record-breaking performances. Huge thanks for joining us, Anthony.
Awesome. No problem, Adam. I'm happy to be here.
So here on The Dadger, we ask the hard-hitting questions. So you're around students all the time, which we'll get to later. But since you're around the younger generation all the time, I think I can speak for everyone when I ask, what's with this 6'7" stuff? I just kidding.
Hilarious.
No.
I wish I could tell you.
So
that was hilarious. There's some things I just don't even bother trying to figure out.
So actually, serious question. Now I usually start these with kind of talk about your upbringing. You're from Plainfield, New Jersey. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Tell us about your family life, your upbringing.
Yeah, definitely. I guess I won't say I had a traditional upbringing in that I was raised by extended family. My grandmother's brother, so my great uncle and his wife, they actually raised me. Had some significant family challenges as a child, and I think they took me in probably at third grade, I believe, and I had actually was sent to I went to go stay with them for a summer and attend summer camp, because I was getting in trouble in school in like second grade or something. And so, when my immediate family, we had some challenges, they, I guess, took me in, so for lack of a better term. So that's right around third grade. It was a big adjustment for me because I was used to things not being as structured to going into a very structured household. My aunt and uncle, ate dinner as a family every night together. I had lists of chores. There were a lot of rules, and I did not like it at first. And I had a lot of headbutting between a young, developing boy and my aunt and uncle. But I so much appreciate that now because it's really helped me to incorporate some things with my own family, but also just help me growing up. I think kids really benefit from having structure and knowing like what to expect and what's going to happen and how things go. So, there was definitely some benefits to it. And my uncle passed away, but my aunt's still around, and we still talk. They attended all of my football games, and just things just really worked out well. So, just very, very blessed for things to fall in place the way they did. My uncle was an airline mechanic. Okay. So it really helped when making a decision to go to school because I could get to and from school on a buddy pass system. Yeah. So, yeah.
So with taking you in and you kind of rebelling a little bit, that had to have taken a lot of patience from them. Do you feel like with your kids now, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but do you feel like you use the patience that they had with you sometimes with your own children? Kind of pass it along?
Absolutely. I think so. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think they were patient at all.
Your perspective's probably 110% different.
Yeah, I don't think they were patient at all. I think I'm doing a little better job in the patience category. Okay. You know what I mean? My uncle was, again, military guy. Okay. So, he would tell me, hey, stop closing the door to your room. I would go in the room and just kind of hide out in my room. And I came home one day and there was no door. He just took the door straight off. He told me like one time, I didn't really listen. He took the door straight off. I remember I was playing sports. They were the ones who got me involved in sports. My aunt was actually the one who saw me jumping around the house and then called my uncle at work and was like, hey, you need to put him in something. I just saw him jump from the landing up like four stairs, just from a standstill. So you need to put them in something. So they put me in track and field, and then football, and then wrestling and basketball. I mean, just all types of stuff. And but I had some ankle issues. I'm flat footed, so I always had feet issues. And I remember spraining my ankle in maybe fifth or sixth grade or something like that. And I would, the style was to wear your shoes untied, right? So I would just never tie my shoes. And my uncle he had told me twice, hey man, you need to tie your shoes up. You already got ankle issues. I don't think the two were connected, but that, in his mind, they were. And so he's like, hey, you need to tie your shoes up. So what I would do is I would tie my shoes up, and then I would walk to school every day. And as soon as I got out of view of the house, I would go back, untie my shoes and style them the way I wanted them. And he caught me, right? He caught me. He walked to the end of the block, and he looked at me, and I just hear this yelling, Anthony, and called me back down to the house. And he goes in the garage and gets some duct tape. No. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know what he's about to do, but he spats my shoes with the duct tape, spats the shoes up. He's like, all right, go to school now. And I'm like, dude, this dude is crazy.
What age was it that they got you involved in sports?
Had to be around pretty much third grade. I think third grade, I started to do track and field. And then from track and field, I went to football and then wrestling. And I think initially my mom actually had put me in karate. She put me in karate and she put me in gymnastics, but I did not fully appreciate what karate really was. So I'm going in there thinking it's going to be like sparring and actual more like, what I'm seeing on TV with Van Damme and all the, all the, so I'm in there wanting to spar. I'm like, I don't want to, this is boring, this is super boring because I'm just doing routines and learning phrases, and we're not even doing any combat. And from there, wrestling really stuck because it was instantly, as soon as I got in there, it's like, okay, I'm going to teach you a low single. You learn a fireman's carry and learn how to shoot. Going to teach you a couple of moves, and then boom, every day you got that you're wrestling. So it was a much better fit for me.
We'll dive into it a little bit later, but in the you did an article with Bucky's Fifth Quarter a while back, but you talk about that first year in college and basically calling your uncle and being like, I think I'm going to transfer out of here, something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And so he basically told you, no, you made this decision, you're going to stick it out. But so was he the driving factor leading up to your college career, or were you was it self-motivation, or was it your uncle pushing you, your coaches pushing you? What do you think pushed you to get to that next level?
I think a little bit of both, so I have, due to some of our family challenges, there was a lot of painful memories for me. And I wanted to get away from home. So that's the first thing. I wanted to get away from home. I wanted to kind of try things on my own. I was very blessed in that I had a lot of people who, saw my potential or saw something in me and decided to pour into me, from teachers, coaches. My aunt and uncle obviously poured a lot of time and energy into me, making sure I got to and from practices and making sure I had proper nutrition and all those things. And then exposing me to other things that I, a lot of times didn't really care about or want to be exposed to, but I think made me a very well-rounded person, or at least open to being more well-rounded versus being more closed-minded. So I would definitely say they played a huge role in it, but a lot of it was driven by me wanting to get away from home, wanting to go out in the world and see what I could do. And, making my college decision was came down to Wisconsin and Boston College. Yep. So those were the two schools that I was really pretty much choosing between.
In one of your first appearances on Believe in Badgers, you talked briefly about having a lot of track offers. So we're track and field your only two sports you did in high school?
I did wrestling my first 2 years. and I was small. I couldn't. We had a good friend of mine who was a phenomenal wrestler. Went on to wrestle in college. I couldn't beat him out for the 160 spot. So and I was just at like 158, 155, so I could wrestle in that weight
Yeah.
class comfortably without having to shave anything. But I couldn't beat him out, and so I was end up wrestling at 171. And I was wrestling guys much heavier than me, and I'm like, this is crazy. I'm trying to gain weight, and I can't gain any weight because I had a high metabolism. And track coach kind of pulled me to the side, like, man, why don't you just run indoor track or give that a try and see if you like it? And, I did that and was very successful. I think my first year running indoor track, we won a national championship in a relay race in Boston. And I just was like, okay, well, this just makes more sense to me.
What events did you do in track?
I did the 1 and the 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe a little what if scenario. Had you only received walk-on offers from football and actual scholarships for track, would you still have picked track? Or I'm sorry, would you still have picked football to go to play in college, or would you have gone with the scholarship route if it was strictly for track?
If it was fully up to me, I probably would have really looked into just walking on to play football. But my family would have been like, yeah, no, if you got money to go to school, you're going to go where the money is, And so, and I wouldn't have minded. I really like track too. So I was probably way better in track than I was in football.
So I always tried looking up high school stats just to see, but prior to like 2009, for some reason, like the stats weren't recorded on the internet. Did you play both sides of the ball in high school?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I played a little bit of safety, but mainly like an outside linebacker position.
Were you hoping to get a scholarship for a specific position, or were you just happy on either side of the ball to get a scholarship?
I wanted to be a running back, and initially I just played football because I enjoyed contact and it just was a fun sport. And guidance counselor at my high school was kind of like, yo, man, you really can maybe do something with this if you want to. You can probably go play college football. I mean, you got the speed, you're strong, you got good balance. And he kind of pulled me to the side and, signed me up for this mentoring program. Again, another example of people just kind of pouring into me. And that's when I really started to enjoy playing running back and started paying attention to other running backs and really getting into watching football. And but I wanted to play running back, and I had some football offers for some schools. And I remember Joe Paterno at Penn State was talking to me, and he told me straight up, like, hey, you want to you want to come here, you won't play. You will not play offense. We like bigger running backs. We like them 210 and up. But you can get your hands on the ball on punt return, kick return, if you want. But other than that, you'd be playing defensive back. And so I was like, yeah, no thanks, no thanks.
So when I have like the hometown guys on here, I'm from Wisconsin, so I understand what division and what conference they came from and what the competition looks like. What was the competition like in New Jersey in high school?
Yeah, so we were in Group 4 at the time. My school has Group 4 is the largest group. So it used to go by the population of males at the high school. I don't know if it still does that, but Group 4 was the highest, the largest group of schools. And I think the school is now lower. I think there may be Group 2 or Group 3. But we competed at the highest level in terms of competition. And a lot of the conference that I came from had a lot of good players. And it was like a mini Big Ten. And that's the best I can say it is. The towns are right on top of each other, a lot of blue collar type of energy in towns. And a lot of guys went on to play in the Big Ten. We had guys playing at Minnesota, Michigan State, not from my high school, but from rival high schools. They went on to play in many it was very common for the Big Ten to pluck kids from that area, from New
Yeah.
Jersey.
So I actually brought this up when I interviewed Bernie as well. Like the Big
Mhm.
Ten in Wisconsin over the years have had such success with running backs out of the East Coast for years. Is it like an East Coast mentality thing, or can you pinpoint one specific, attribute for the reason like Big Ten and UW has had success with some of these East Coast backs?
Yeah, I mean, I can just give you some. My perspective is pretty simple. I mean, there's a lot of similarities in playing in the Big Ten and playing football. I can speak for in New Jersey. Like I said, you're playing against people that you likely played youth sports with. I mean, it's a very small
Yeah.
state, so not much separation between people. You play in the cold weather, so there's no issues with playing in cold
Yeah.
weather. There's a certain mentality. Like I said, there's like blue collar kind of toughness. Jersey and East Coast has not that other places don't, but I just think that there is an element of work ethic and, lunch pail type of mentality that you get with Jersey kids. So I think that lent itself very well to what Coach Alvarez wanted to do and the type of guys he wanted. So I think that was something. And then, the Big Ten was, even though you have one rivalry on paper, because some of the schools are on top of each other, there's all these other little rivalries going on, right? Like Minnesota's our official rivalry. But if you ask people who played with us, we had a rivalry with Iowa.
Yep.
We didn't like Purdue, Michigan State, Ohio State when I was there was a big deal. So it was very similar in New Jersey playing football, is that, you're playing against a lot of teams that you just don't really like. And so I think that lent itself well too.
So you had in high school, you talk about your breakout year being your junior year. You said you were receiving a lot of offers, but only a couple of scholarships. Did your uncle or anyone else kind of help you navigate those offers? Because I know you say basically you were telling schools, like, unless they had a scholarship, you were going to look elsewhere, right?
Yep. So I didn't really understand anything about college football recruiting, right? And so I was being recruited by a guy named Al Golden. Al Golden was at Boston College, and he was cleaning up New Jersey. He was a linebacker coach or a defensive coach, but he was responsible for Jersey, and he ended up becoming like a head coach at some point, maybe like Miami or Temple or something like that. Really good dude, really, really great guy. And so he was the one who kind of put me on game. He's like, listen, Ant, we got a scholarship for you here. When you talk to these other schools, I want you to ask them if they have a scholarship. And if they don't tell you that, if they don't give you a yes without hesitation, then you're on their board, but you're not a first tier guy. And I said, what do you mean by their board? And he started explaining to me, this is how recruiting works. They got a big board, and there's the guys that they want to recruit, they want to offer. Then they have a tier 2 guy who they're gonna offer if they don't get to tier 1. Then they have a tier 3, and he says sometimes it goes down to 5 tiers when players really need depth at positions. They're going to have a list of people, and they'll keep you interested until they get the person they want. And if you're the person they want, they're going to give you an offer. I said, oh, say less. You know what I mean? And then I started cutting through the crap. I started talking to some of these coaches like, hey, man, do you have a scholarship offer for me right now? Well, we want to get you in, have you come see. Okay, call me when you have a scholarship. Otherwise, leave me alone. And I kind of got a little, I had to be a little direct with them.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to figure out, it's my future. I'm trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do with my life for the next 4 or 5 years? I don't have time to play games with y'all. So
so it sounded like you had an actual good relationship with the Boston College coach. How'd you make that decision then, I guess, to come to Wisconsin? I mean, was it like you just saw, Barry's tutelage, like the good running backs that we had produced, you saw more opportunities with Wisconsin? Or I know you mentioned you had some friends at Wisconsin at the time, or did they have like a great pitch that sold you?
So a couple of things happened. And like my aunt, she was, like I said, a very logical, wise person. She always was she's the queen of the T chart, right? So every time I'm trying to make a decision, she's like, you need to make a T chart. Weigh the pros and cons. And so that's what I did. I started thinking about Boston College in Wisconsin, and I'm thinking about, pros and cons. So, Boston College, my best friend at the time, his sister was a professor there. Yep, his sister was a professor there. I had a cousin, distant cousin, who went to school there. So I knew people there. And then Boston College, I really liked the coach that was recruiting me. I didn't have the best, didn't get the best feeling about the head coach. I mean, he seemed like a really good coach, but he seemed very militant. You know what I mean? And I don't know if he would have walked into my household and sat down with my family, how that would have felt. But I was confident that Coach Al would have walked into the house super confident, been able to sit down and have a conversation. Him and my uncle probably would have talked for hours. And I think he had broke his leg at the time or something, so he couldn't actually be there. But I spoke to him on the phone, and he sent Coach White and I think Coach Baker was recruiting me. And they walked in and showed me some film. And they're like, hey, this is the guy. This is Ron Dane. Here's Michael Bennett. He's going to start next year. This is the offense we run. It was very similar to Boston College. They ran a zone scheme. They wanted the back at 7, which I really liked because I'm like, I can see everything. I'm short. So I like to be – I don't want to be, 5 yards behind, guys that are 6'7", right? So I like being back at 7. And they showed me a film of, this is what the running back is trained to read. And I remember watching Michael Bennett do it. And I said to myself, I can do that. I could actually do exactly what he just did. I think I can do it, And so that really helped seal the deal for me wanting to go to Wisconsin. And last but not least, it was just crazy, but there was a fraternity that I wanted to join, and they had a chapter at UW. They didn't have fraternities at Boston College, and they were forbidden. And so it all went back to the mentoring organization I was kind of telling you about. It was ran by this graduate chapter of this fraternity, and I'm like, oh, cool. I know I want to do that. So I have that. I have, good feelings about, both coaches, good feelings about the coach. I believe I can do well in the system. I already have some people out there, and I had a cousin, and again, my best friend's sister was a faculty member out there, so I felt like there was some support there, and that's what I chose.
You talking about them showing you kind of the play style. You also talk about it in that Bucky's fifth quarter interview, but you really struggled with the playbook. So I had Bernie on here. It's very similar to what Bernie said. Bernie said he struggled when he first got there learning the plays too. So his style to learn them was basically just repetition. Was that yours as well? And was this transition the toughest for you to learn the playbook, or was there something else between playing high school and college that was tougher for you?
Well, I think everything, right? So it wasn't just the playbook. The playbook was a big piece of it because I was coming from a high school that was not as developed, right? Like we run a triple right and a triple left, a veer right, a veer left. Those are actual play calls. So you go from that type of play call to a college system where they're giving you personnel, then they're giving you formations and motions and pass protections, and then the play call. And you're like, what is all this stuff, right? And so there was that piece. Then there was the strength and conditioning piece, and I remember that was a huge piece for me was they sent us a video and a manual home. Now imagine trying to learn how to do hang cleans from watching 4 pictures of a person in motion doing a hang clean. Now I'm working out I had a summer job at the Y. I'm working out with people who, had never played college football, never played any sports. Some of these guys are probably fresh out of lockup, right? And so they're doing all these upper body workouts don't do that. Just do some dips. And I'm like, no, I can't. I think this says I'm supposed to do a split jerk. So I don't know what this does. I don't know. So it's really hard for me to try to figure things out. And when I got there, I'm like, oh my gosh. everybody, I came in with 4 other running backs, and they came from high schools that had way more developed programs. So they know how to hang clean. They know how to do split jerks. They know how to do all those Olympic lifts. They have weightlifting teams. So they're picking up on the lifts right away. And I'm sitting here squatting the bar, just the bar, because I never squatted in my life. And I'm squatting the bar, and they're like, you got to get your range of motion. You know, you got to loosen your hips. And it was so embarrassing. So my pride was hurt because I'm like, damn, I'm out here bad. I'm out here real nasty. real nasty, grown man squatting the bar in college. And so my pride was hurt. I didn't know the playbook. I was super discouraged because we had so many running backs, and so many came in with me that I'm like, I'm never going to see the field here. And I can remember my uncle coming to games my redshirt year, and I would go sneak into like the punter's line or the kicker's line because I'm like, okay, it went by the depth chart, and you're every 5 yards, starter in the front, then the second string behind, and so I'm like 9 people back, right? And there's nobody. I look to the left, nobody there. Look to the right, nobody there. And I was like, okay, I need to I need to go get another line. This is embarrassing. My uncle would be calling me. I remember him shouting my name to take a picture, and I'm like, no, don't take a picture of this. Don't capture this on film. And I think I still have the picture, but I was turned around. He's yelling at me. I'm like, man, this dude is great. He's driving me crazy. So
a little bit more about that. You said you had thought about transferring. Do you think with how the transfer portal is now, had it been like that then, if you would have ultimately have transferred, or do you think your uncle would have also given you the same advice to just kind of stick it out, like see your decision through?
Yeah, first of all, it wasn't advice. It was a command. It was more like a command than advice. But I don't think I would have hopped in the portal because he wouldn't have let me hop in the portal. He would, I could make decisions for myself, but at that point I trusted him. So it's like, I don't think he would have let me just leave. And when I tell you I was trying to leave, I'm like, look, I think I can go run track at Northwestern. I think I can go run track at Clemson. I can go to the military. I even told him because he was an Air Force guy.
You were trying anything.
I wouldn't mind going to the military. I just got to get up out of here. You know what I mean? So, and he, but he was like, no, you made this decision. You need to learn how to stick with your decisions. And I think that really resonated with me. So,
so
things worked out.
On top of the struggles, maybe that first year on the football field, academically and socially, did you feel you had any difficulties with the transition from high school to college in those areas, or was it predominantly just on the football field, do you think?
Yeah, it was mainly on the football field. I mean, I'm always somebody who, for whatever reason, people just naturally talk to me. So it's not hard for me to make friends. I can go to, move somewhere new and go to the gym, and all of a sudden, three new buddies, right? Just from small talk at the gym or small talk at the grocery store. So that's always been my, I don't know what to call it, but I don't have an issue adjusting and making friends. And, when you come in to a football team, your recruiting class is kind of like your immediate family, right? Like you form some pretty tight bonds with them.
Yeah. That first year, did you have any like older upperclassmen take you under their wing?
So yes and yes. I would say that Jeff Mack, who had not only been there, he came into class before me, but he was from Madison, so he knew a lot about. And I just looked up to him. He was smart, super smart guy. Took care of his business on the field and off the field, and was a good player. So I really looked up to him a lot. I had my host on my recruiting trip. so funny, was a guy named Roger Knight. Okay. So I had a couple of different hosts. I had dinner with Ron. I remember having dinner with him. He was real cool. Roger Knight, who was an outside linebacker, hosted me. He was a Brooklyn guy. We're from the Bronx, one of the two. And he looked just like Isaac Hayes, man. I don't know if Roger just reminded me of Isaac Hayes, man. He had a super smart guy, very mellow, very chill, didn't really go out, didn't really do many things. But he just had this kind of easiness about himself that like I've only one time seen that guy get rattled, and it had absolutely nothing to do with anything that you would think it was, right? Like this guy's in the middle of games, heated games, defensive battles, squatting tons of weight. He never got rattled about any of that stuff, but he had an Isaac Hayes t-shirt that he wore under a Bob Marley t-shirt that he wore under his equipment every day. And for some reason, his shirt was damp. And this guy went bananas. And I'm like, damn. I just admired that because I'm like, not that he went crazy, but the fact that like nothing really rattles this guy. The only thing that rattles this guy was having a damp Bob Marley shirt. And I don't know I never asked him what the significance of the shirt was. He was too scary to like
approach
I'm not getting in this, man. Yeah, I'm not approaching him about the shirt, man. Nobody would. You know what I mean? He just, because he was quiet, he kind of kept to himself. But when he spoke or he got mad or he got upset, I mean, people listen because that's just not really his style. He's very easygoing. And I liked his energy a lot. But Jeff Mack would probably be the person who definitely took me under his wing. I wouldn't say like officially, but more so like he provided a really good example for me to see, how things are done, how to interact with the coaches, how to interact with everyone else. He was a really good example to watch.
That first year, the article I read, it said something about, maybe some of the coaches had thought that they made a recruiting mistake bringing you in. So that off season, was your mentality and training like, all right, well, I'm just going to prove them wrong? Or what was your mentality like in that off season?
So I will say it wasn't even an off season. What it was scout team.
Okay.
Right? Like my first year scout team, I'm like, I started to like really get into it to the point where I'm like, okay, I got to be, whoever we're playing, TJ Duckett or, whoever, I have to imitate them. And I started to get a kick out of, I started to have a chip on my shoulder. One, I'm learning the lifts now. I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable, but also felt like I wasn't being given a chance or considered. So I started to go super hard on scout team. And there were a couple of red shirts, a couple of guys from our class that we're all on the scout team together. So, we considered it a victory if we made the first team defense have to repeat something. And so I would just like, okay, let's make them repeat. Let's make them repeat the play because we know the coach is going to cuss them out. And that was a small victory for us because that means that we must have busted a big play. And so I just started having fun with it, right? Like I'm emulating the other team, but we're going crazy. All of us are going crazy on the scout team. Another running back with me, Jerome Pettis, and he was going crazy. We both were going crazy on the scout team. Our linemen were not afraid. They would get in a fights with the starting defensive line. And I remember just, I can remember them repeating plays 3-4 times in a row. And the defensive line coach at the time, John Palermo, just going crazy, and I can't repeat anything that he was saying, but he didn't hold back anything. And I can remember him going crazy. And then he started looking at me and saying, Anthony, you can play football, man. You're a football player, And, I think I kind of won him over somehow. And then he started talking to the offensive line coach. Now all of a sudden he starts to talk to me like, and both line coaches were scary. They weren't the guys you just went to and talked. Those were not the coaches you just went and started small talk with. They just were scary dudes. And all of a sudden, he started making little comments and talking to me. And I'm like, yo, this is super awkward. Like, what is this? You know what I mean? And so I remember things went really well on scout team. And this is a true story, man. I remember we were playing in Hawaii and it was a Thanksgiving. It was over the Thanksgiving break, right? So Thanksgiving in New Jersey is a big deal. It's every high school, they used to do this. I don't know if they still do, but every high school plays their rival on Thanksgiving Day. So it becomes like a homecoming per se for, people coming back home. And the tradition is you house hop on Thanksgiving. So you just go to all your friends' houses and you eat a little bit there, and you just keep swinging by, and then you finish at your house. And by that time you're cooked. You're eating yourself into a deep sleep, dangerous levels of food consumption. But so I remember being excited because I'm like, finally I get to go home. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I had, the coaches called me up and said, "Hey, we're going to take a couple of the red shirts to Hawaii." Right. And they put my name on the board, and I was hot. Yeah. And I called home and said, "I can't come home." I called my uncle. "I can't come home. They're taking me to Hawaii. They're taking some red shirts to Hawaii. I'm going out there basically to run scout team in Hawaii." And he was like, "Man, you big dummy. What are you complaining about a trip to Hawaii for?" You know what I mean? And I'm like, I want to come home. And he's like, "Home ain't going nowhere. Like go take advantage of this opportunity and show them what you got." And I was so happy that I went because we got to do Pearl Harbor. I got to see that, and I just remember that trip. Like, man, this was. I'm glad that he talked some sense into me, but I was hot at first because I knew not like I was going to play. So I'm like, what am I doing out here? But I think it was just kind of a reward for people who were working hard on scout team all year.
So you break the record for the most 100-yard rushing games. How are you able to balance kind of the pressure of that national attention with the demands of the UW coursework?
I've always been into school, you know what I mean? So even to this day, I like to learn things. So school was not going to, I wasn't going to ever be one of those guys who only gave effort in one area. You know what I mean? I felt like, part of what I was raised to do is to try to give, to commit to something and put all and give your all to it, and I think school to me was one of those things that came natural to me. And, once I kind of figured out, okay, I had a rough first semester per my standards. I had a rough first semester of college. I remember getting like the first D I've ever gotten before. And I was happy because I thought I was going to fail this class. And I was in Hawaii and you had to call in and get your grades on via telephone at that point in time. So I call in and they're like, "For geography, blah, 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 you have a D." And I just remember jumping for joy, like, okay, I didn't fail. You know what I mean? I even tell my students sometimes that was the happiest D I've ever received. But I eventually figured out college. You know what I mean? I didn't have a scooter, so I used the bus and took the bus around campus, and I had flashcards that I would use to study while I was on the bus and just try to make the most of my time. I didn't go to traditional libraries. I went to college. I didn't go to college library. I would go to the College of Ed, or I'd go to Steambox Science Library. And I had some really good people in the College of Ed who took me under their wing, so I was very fortunate because they kind of helped me with class selection and, just kind of really, really poured into me to make sure that I was progressing towards, getting that degree and finishing school and doing it, majoring in something that I really wanted to major in.
Yeah. So I was going to go there kind of with it. So student athlete support systems look different at every different campus, right? They're constantly evolving. Were those two the ones that really mentored you in the school of those school of ed professors? Were they the ones that really mentored you and kind of like kept you grounded and on track in academic terms?
Yeah, I had a couple of different professors and faculty that I really connected with. So Dr. Gloria Lassen Billings, she was a big, big, big part of me doing what I wanted to do, because a lot of athletes at the time, especially football players, were not doing education, even if they wanted to do it, because of the practicum schedule, the student teaching schedule, and not really being some serious time conflicts. And so they were kind of like, yeah, this doesn't, this, when I told them, hey, I want to do elementary ed, they were kind of like, I don't know if that's going to work, and, I actually met with Dr. Ladson Billings and said, hey, is this something we can do? And she said, absolutely. We'll make it work. We would love to get more athletes over here. So I'm like, okay, there's some type of disconnect, but it's neither here nor there. But, she very much was like, yeah, whatever, we'll do whatever we can to make this schedule work and work around your football schedule. And so once she told me that, then I just started meeting with her. So I figured out how to, pick my own classes. And, I just was like, well, I don't really need student athlete support services as much. I figured it out. So
Throughout your college career, you battled some injuries. Did those injuries teach you anything about patience or what your identity outside of football might have been at the time?
Yeah, I think so. I think injuries are really tough to deal with psychologically, because, for a running back, depending on what you hurt, you got a bad will, you got to trust it to do what it's supposed to do again, which is tough in itself. But then you miss significant time, and then you got to, reacclimate yourself to the speed of the game, and you got to make sure you have a good feel for run fits and so I think that definitely was challenging for me. I do think that coming back from injury was always tough, but then also when you're in idle time and you're not competing, how do you still remain an engaged teammate, a good leader in the locker room when you're really battling personally with your own stuff, you know what I mean? So it's interesting now because they have all types of yoga and meditation and sports psychologists. They're really starting to pour a little bit more and put more attention into some of this stuff now. Whereas, before it was like you're kind of figuring this stuff out on your own and, you're getting treatment and you're doing rehab, but the mental and psychological aspect of it, you pretty much figured out on your own.
So you touched base on it a little bit there. What was your mindset going into games, knowing like it's Wisconsin offense? You're going to have a heavy workload and a lot of touches every single game.
It was exciting for me, and I really enjoyed it. There were games where coach would tell me like, "Hey, we're looking at the run fits, and they it's not looking good for them. Like you need to get some rest come Wednesday or Thursday night because we're gonna just feed you the ball." And it didn't bother me at all. You know what I mean? I felt like that's what I came here for. I felt like there was a strong tradition of running backs at UW. And all of them, the ones that came before me, I felt like I was just trying to do them justice by continuing to carry the torch. Sure. So, it was honor. I was honored to be trusted in that regard.
Since you talked a little bit about, back in your day, guys figuring it out on their own. Did you have any rituals or mental routines you did on game day or recovery days?
Yeah, game day for sure. Game day mainly was music, you know what I mean? But we started we sat near. I always sat next to the same person, So from the time I traveled until me and Jeff Mack sat on the bus together, and we sat in the back seat. And even to this day, I'll just if I see him do something good or get a promotion, I'll just text them backseat or just seat, and that's just saying like, yeah, we still doing it, and that was a big ritual for me. And then I used to, we had some pranks that we played on the bus with people, you know what I mean? We would, some of these possibly were my ideas, some of them possibly weren't. But we would, it was like a cardinal sin for your phone to go off in a meeting. So, that was viewed as kind of like a lack of focus or a lack of attention to detail. So you never wanted to be the guy whose phone went off in the meeting because the whole team would just turn and kind of look at you like, what are you doing? And so everyone, before you get to the meeting, you turn your phone on silent, you sit down, you double check to make sure it's on silent. Coach starts speaking, you triple check to make sure it's on silent. It was a big deal. And so on the bus was the same thing. You couldn't, as soon as coach got on the bus, the whole energy of the bus, it was time to lock in and focus. So we knew guys' phones were on silent, right? So what we would do is we would just call, and if we got somebody whose phone was off and it was going to voicemail, we just would keep leaving messages like, "Hey, just checking in, just until their voicemail was full." So that was one tradition we did, and then before the game, I would say it was more about music. Certain songs I would listen to on the way to the stadium. I had a track I would listen to, "Broken Wings" by this Tupac song. I would listen to on the way to the stadium. I did that because there were a couple of guys I grew up with that I unfortunately passed due to violence. I learned about that in training camp my first year, so it really, really took a toll on me emotionally. But I would listen to that song just to kind of honor them. I would listen to either some gospel music. I would listen, and then I would listen to something a little heavier with a drum beat on it. And then right before the game, I would listen to gospel music, something that would just kind of bring me down a little bit and calm me down, so I could just really focus.
Yeah. If you had to define your college career in one word that reflected your mindset at the time, what would it be and why?
I would just say grateful. You know what I mean? I would say grateful. I feel like, things didn't end the way I wanted them to end. I really, thought I could have finished better. But everything that happened to me, everything was a lesson. Everything was a life lesson that really helped mold me to be the person I am today. Still figuring things out, but I can attest a lot of things to my experience, and I'm just grateful to be able to get a scholarship to the University of Wisconsin and accept a scholarship, and then have so many people, pour into me and really believe in me was huge. So I find myself to this day saying things to my kids that Alvy said to us.
Yeah.
I mean, I find myself saying that at work, and the way I manage and the way I manage people and the way I think about work and managing things. I just find I attest a lot of it to UW and what I learned there. So. Yeah.
Before we wrap up the college portion here, if you'll play with me, I've been playing this game with all these athletes, start, sit, redshirt, with guys that you've played with over your 4 years at UW. Okay. So I'm going to keep it simple for you. I got Al Johnson, Ben Johnson, and Joe Thomas. You got to start one, sit one, and redshirt.
Oh, damn, man. That's torture, man. I want to start Joe Thomas. Okay. I'm going to start Joe Thomas, and I'm going to sit Al, and I'm going to redshirt Ben.
Okay.
And that's a tough one because Ben was one of my favorite humans on this planet. You know what I mean? Just a really good guy and a really talented tackle. But Joe Thomas coming in, I mean, you could just tell. I'm like, can we just start this guy? Like, I know we have all these kind of rules, like we don't start freshmen on the offensive line here. I'm like, throw the rule away and start this guy because he's clearly one of the best players on the team. So
at what point in your, towards the end of your college career, maybe it wasn't even towards the end of your college career, did you really think like the NFL was becoming a real possibility for you?
I didn't really think about it until, our offensive line coach was, he had a meeting with us and talked to us about insurance policies and getting insurance policies on us if we had desire, if we had desire to play pro football, like, that it was common for athletes to consider getting an insurance policy. That way, if they got hurt or something didn't go right, you blow out your knee and all of a sudden you're not eligible or not getting any looks. There's still some financial and after that meeting, I'm like, wow, is this really a thing? You know what I mean? Like I'm really just having a good time. really having a good time. So I wasn't thinking about it. And then my coach started talking to me about it too. Like, look, you did back to back 1,400-yard
Yeah.
seasons. You have another good season, then I understand if you decided to leave. And I'm like, damn, like this is crazy.
Did you?
I just never really thought that far
Yeah.
ahead.
For so, not really thinking that far ahead. Did you do like a draft party or anything?
I didn't do a draft party per se, but I had my uncle flew in
Okay.
town. I had developed my uncle and aunt flew in town. Some friends from high school flew in town, and I had developed a good relationship with one of the strength and conditioning coaches. He was the assistant coach, Brian Bott.
I've had him
on. Again, somebody who again took me under their wing. When you talk about somebody who came in and didn't know how to squat.
Yeah.
And so he pulled me all the way to the end of the weight room, and he's like, "Oh no, you're gonna learn how to squat. We're gonna get your range of motion right." And he kept working with me, and so I stayed in probably the same squat rack for most of the time I was there. I went to the same squat rack,
Yeah.
and we had this system where, if you handled the weight pretty well, you might get a +5 on your card. They'll add some weight. Bot was going crazy on my card with like +35s. I'm like, bro, did you see did you see that last set? I didn't dominate that last set, man. What are you doing? And he also was the first coach to like curse me out. You know what I mean? Like, and I tell people all the time, I was thankful for that interaction, because it really set the tone for what I was going to expect, right? Like we were doing SOAR, which is new student orientation. Me and Erasmus decided, let's skip the second half of the day. We've done everything important at SOAR, so we skipped the second half of the day and head over to the weight room. Let's get some cool points. And walked in there, and I never heard so many F-bombs in my life. You know what I mean? Get the F out of here. What the F are you doing in here? You guys are skipping academic stuff. This is bull crap. We can't, I'm like, golly. I flew out of the way. I literally ran out to the weight room and ran back to SOAR, because I'm like, yo, these guys are crazy, man. These guys are crazy, man. And I'm like, okay. So I realized I was at a place they weren't going to let you, you committed to something, you had to be accountable for doing it, and that's what I got from that. And so, but Bebot was a big part of that. So I did watch the draft at his house. Yeah.
When they called you, the Colts, that is, right? That's Colts. When they called you, did you have like a feeling of this was a culmination or ode to your college career, or was it more of like something entirely new? Like this is a brand new chapter for you?
Yeah, it was kind of a blur. Things were happening really fast. And I did believe it was a new chapter. I remember going through the NFL Combine experience and thinking like, yeah, this is crazy. I didn't really like the Combine experience that much. Just kind of give you a number, and that's what you are the whole time. And so I didn't really like that too much, but I understood it. And the Colts and the Bears were the two teams that expressed pretty significant interest in me. So when I was talking to, I interviewed with Coach Dungy, obviously I interviewed with Lovie Smith. So I wasn't surprised. And Coach Dungy was a Big Ten guy, and the whole Colts roster was full of Big Ten guys.
I was going to say, they had some Wisconsin boys on there already, didn't they? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep. Sorgi was out there.
So
I know Donnie had been out there for some time. So
I'm always curious about athletes who got drafted, and how they find their agent and kind of make that choice for their agent. Did you have an agent, and how did that process work?
It was a tough process for me. I mean, it was kind of like, recruiting all over again, without somebody to really give me that kind of advice that I told you that Coach Golden had given me. It was kind of like, what am I supposed to be looking for again? I'm not a business
Right.
person, right? Like I'm a football player, so I don't know what to look for in an agent. I don't know where to even start this process. And you start getting all these phone calls and emails and people showing up, and there were like two companies that I really really liked. And then there were some companies that had some ties to the program. They represented some other guys on some former
Okay.
Badgers, so that there was a certain trust
Yep.
element there. And then there was some guys who had just new people who were agents, and so you're trying to sift through all of that and figure out like what's going to be the best fit for
Yep.
you. And so that's what I was trying to figure out. And there were two companies that I'm like, I could have flipped a coin and been like happy with
Sure.
either one. One was a Madison-based company. I think it was a husband and wife. And then one was a New York-based company, where they had already they represented a lot of different players, and they tended to represent guys who were talented, but also very much high character guys. And so I really like that about them, and that's what I went with.
So a lot of athletes take, the ultimate goal is playing professional, and very few achieve it. And some, a lot of people keep striving for it or hold on to that because they're unsure of who they are outside of sports. Was there a turning point for you, or was there a moment for you, I guess, when you knew it was time to walk away and close that chapter of your life?
Yeah, I think for me it was, I was I was drafted and then cut, and then the practice squad, and then cut, and then back to the practice squad. Then they wanted to send me to NFL
Yeah.
Europe, and at the same time, a team from Canada called, and they're like, we'd like to bring you up here. You can, you would be able to negotiate your own terms and contract and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I like that. I did the Canada thing for 2 years, and then wasn't on a very good team, and I got traded during the offseason to a team where I thought I would have more of a better chance to play. And so I'm training all offseason, getting ready to report for camp, and then like 2 weeks before camp, I got the call that I was released, and I'm like, this is crazy, not really having a kind of living by the phone and not really having secure job security. And that's when I started to realize that like, this is not something I can do forever. And I need to figure out, what it is that I want to do. Is it going to be middle school teaching like I went to school for? Or is it going to be something else?
Had you,
And during,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Had you been teaching middle school while you were coaching out, or playing out there a little bit? I think I read, right?
I was substitute teaching, which, is very different than teaching, right? So I'm substitute teaching at a Title I school in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where I decided to move to. And I wasn't, subbing is different, right?
Yeah.
Kids show up differently with the substitute teacher. But even through that process, I started to question whether or not the classroom was for me. Like, is this what I really want to do? And I called my mentor. I called one of my mentors, and I asked her, like, hey, I don't know what to do, and she started telling me, like, this is Dr. Lassen Billings. She started telling me, like, why don't you, what is it that you're passionate about? What's something that you're happy about? And I'm like, well, I had a really good college experience. And she was like, well, you ever thought about working on a college campus? And she went right to the faculty ranks. She's an academic and a scholar. So she's like, curriculum and instruction might be a good, like a good look for you. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to be a college professor. I'm talking about like, I really like the student life, the student affairs, because I had a unique experience in college in that I got out and did things that a lot of football players don't really do, right? Like I, again, joined the fraternity. I worked at the UW Telefund. So I called parents and alumni and tried to raise money for the school.
Yep.
I worked downtown at Ragstock, which was a thrift store. I worked for a security company in the summertime. I was an RA. So I had all these different experiences and touch points at the university where I just really liked working on a college campus. And I thought that, and she was telling me about a master's program, and I talked to her about it, and I'm like, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and apply to the program. And she's like, well, if you do, you can apply for an assistantship and I might be able to get you some funding. And she did.
Yeah.
I did a project assistantship. We went to went to church, same church, and I did a project assistantship at the church, helping young kids with technology. So,
Do you see any parallels now between the discipline of preparing for a game and the structure of supporting students?
yes and no. Uh, and I work on the side of supporting students where I don't call it the shadows, but I work on in the personal spaces where, that don't always make headlines for
Yeah.
good reason,
Yeah.
right? Like when students are struggling with things, when students are making bad decisions, they're getting involved in things they shouldn't be involved in. Um, I won't say I see a parallel between preparing for a game and working with students. I do see parallels in the sense that, you know, coaching. What I'm doing is
Yeah.
coaching.
Yep.
Why I wanted to be a teacher was because I wanted to coach. I wanted to help people. I wanted to mentor people. That's what I liked about teaching. I just had a teacher who really did that through
Right.
teaching. And so in turn, I wanted to do the same thing because, hey, I want to help someone the way Dr. Watson helped me back in high school. And so, but it really was the coaching aspect. So I think, coaching people and working with them when they've made a bad decision or they're struggling personally to overcome some demons or challenges they're having. I do see some parallels in
Mm-hmm.
that. I do see parallels in being able to tell people, hey, you made a mistake. And now you got to get back in the game and got to make the correction and get back
Yeah.
out there, So I think I had a staff member ask me this, like, what do you think football gave you that helps you? And I'm like, well, the ability to make a mistake. You play in front of 100,000 people or 80,000 people. You make a mistake on one play, you can't sit there and just,
Yeah.
absorb that mistake and dwell on it all day because, in a few minutes, you're going to be called to get back
Yeah.
out there. You know what I mean? And so you don't have the luxury of doing that. The other thing is that, there's really no place like a football locker room, in my opinion, because you got 100 plus guys coming from all over the place. And, there are things that we learn to do that I feel like sometimes non-athletes just can't even
Yeah.
do, right? Like you can't work with someone who has different political views than you,
Yeah.
right? Like you're struggling to have a conversation about something you disagree with. You don't want to talk to the person next to you, whereas, you learn from being a football player or being an athlete, you learn how to kind of focus on the common goals. You learn how to have conversations and see people for, what type of man is this or what type of person is this? And, to look beyond what someone's beliefs are and get to know them. So it really helps in those situations with students because you're working with students who, some of them may look the same, but they come from different
Yeah.
backgrounds, right? That's like saying someone who is born in the northern woods in Wisconsin has the same upbringing as someone in Madison. They don't. They may
Right.
not, right? There's some differences that extend beyond, some of the big things, big categories like race and gender and things that you see. So it really helps you get to know people for who they are. It helps you be able to build rapport with anyone, take a more humble approach to how you interact with other humans. Like, I just want to learn about you. Tell me what you're into. Tell me what things make you excited. Tell me what things, are important. Where do your values sit, and so, and to do that to listen and talk to people with a humble spirit, because that's what we did on the football field. Nobody really had time to dive into all the things that made us different. We just kind of focused on a common goal and wanting to produce something, right? And so the production in football was to get a win or to get to a bowl game or to go undefeated or win a national championship, whatever it was. And then, interacting with a student, hey, I'm trying to get you. The goal is to get you across the
Yeah.
finish line. We want to get you a degree. You know what I mean? And so I think there's some transferables there for sure.
If you could give one piece of advice to a young athlete today, excuse me, who is struggling to find their identity outside of sports, what would you give them?
Struggling to find their identity outside of sports, I would tell them to figure out what type of things they're passionate about. What type of things bring you a sense of fulfillment? Just doing them. naturally, right? And so if you can figure out what those things are, then you can tie those underlying, you can tie those to your value
Yeah.
system, and then you can figure out, what it is you may want to do, and do something that you're actually going to give you a sense of fulfillment because it's tied to your purpose. For me, like I said, it was helping people, it was coaching people, it was giving people advice, you know, um, and I feel like that's tied to the core of who I am. I love to give people advice. People call me a know-it-all. Some people don't. But I like to give people advice. I like to counsel people. I like to give people guidance. I like to help people. And in doing that, I feel a sense of fulfillment. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I feel a strong sense of fulfillment beyond any paycheck or anything else. I feel like I'm actually serving my purpose.
So speaking of kids and giving them advice, we'll switch over to fatherly advice. You got excuse me. You have
Jesus.
three kids, correct?
I
And
do. I
and
do.
the oldest is the only one old enough to play sports, or
Yeah, technically, he's
okay,
11. He's a sixth grader. And then we have two girls. So we have AJ's our son is 11, sixth grader. Two girls, Avery, she's 2, and Aubrey just turned
okay.
1. So we got 2 under 2 in the household, and we got a sixth grader. Yeah,
Has he started playing any sports yet?
he's done sports. He's not really into sports, to be honest
Okay.
with you. He started off playing soccer years ago. He did soccer. He did flag football. Excuse me. He did karate. He did swimming. He did track. Well, he did not track, but they had a run
Yeah.
club. He did
Yeah.
run club last year. And so my big thing with him was I want him to do team sports. And I think that team sports teach you how to
Yep.
lose. And what I see a lot of times is kids, younger adults they've never lost before. They've never dealt with a devastating
Yeah.
loss and how to recover
Hmm.
from it. And so you get that in team
Yeah.
sports. And so I was telling my friends that, and they're like, that don't make no sense. You put him in sports so he can, go crazy and do all this stuff. I'm like, no, I just really want him to learn how to
Yeah.
lose. And working on a college campus for the last 10, 15 years, you see students who don't know how to lose, right? And like, one C or one D or one F or a bad decision, and it's earth
Yeah.
shattering because you've never taken a loss before and recovered from it. So I remember his first soccer game, they lost in like overtime. Oh my gosh, my man collapsed on the field. He was,
Yeah.
he's laid out.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, he was hurt. He was devastated. But I would rather him learn how to take those losses and learn
Yes.
from them and figure out what went wrong now than to get through life and get to a point where now you got other people depending on you and you don't know how to take a
Yeah.
loss.
Right.
You don't know how to recover from a bad decision, how to forgive yourself, how to look and evaluate the consequences of your choices. And so to me, sports was I really connect them to some of the life lessons that they bring, and so that's what I wanted for him. My middle daughter, she's scary. That's all I can say. She's extremely athletic to the point where we've had to Avery. Her name's Avery. We've had to Avery proof the house, right? Like she's
You're like bolting stuff down.
yeah, I'm not even joking. Like you look on our cabinets and everything's like got extra layers of bolts. She'll jump off of stuff. She'll climb anything. She's super fast. And so we definitely, as soon as she gets old enough, we can put her in something: soccer, swim, gymnastics, something. So
you talked a little bit about it, teamwork. So sports to me teach, discipline, resilience, teamwork, all those. Which of those lessons do you find yourself passing down to your children most often? Or is it different for different ages?
yeah, I think it's different for different ages. With the young two, because they're 2 under 2. It's really just trying to play zone
Yes.
defense, right? Like we're trying to make sure these kids don't do something that severs a limb or something. And older for AJ, I think it is a little bit of teamwork, understanding people's
Yep.
roles, working together. learning how to, move beyond mistakes, how to make a mistake and then make a correction, and then not to confuse. This is an Alvey quote: "Don't confuse effort with results." You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you don't confuse effort with results. I find myself using another Alvey quote: "Abuse leads to restriction." That's another one. That's a famous Alvey quote. And I'm like, I tell them that all the time. Abuse leads to restriction, man.
I saw that on the camp podcast you did, and I was like, that is a great quote. I'm going to start using that.
Yeah, I use that with students too. I was like, hey, abuse leads to restriction. Like you have privileges and you have rights, but if you abuse those rights, you may find yourself restricted from doing certain things in life. So I mean, I think there was a lot of gems that we learned from Coach in his era. So very thankful for that. But parenting, being a dad is there's really there's no playbook for it, man. All kids are different, and from AJ being a child, he was the most easygoing, laid back kid. So when our second came along, and it was some years later, she was not. She's like, look, I'm here to raise hell. You know what I mean? I'm here to tear stuff up. That's what I'm for. And so, learning, like, they're all different humans. So there is no playbook for it. There's certain things you kind of stick to. And again, going back to things I really want to implement in my household is structure, logic, using good thinking before we make decisions, and understanding what's permissible, what's not permissible. And, those things I think are helpful. But in terms of being a dad, it's definitely one of the toughest jobs out there.
Is there a moment, and maybe this is a dumb question, but is there a moment from your playing career that you've been proud to share with your kids? Or I guess, have you broken out the highlight DVD or YouTube highlights yet and been like, hey, I could ball back in the day?
What's funny is I didn't break out any highlights for him, but years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we were watching TV, and they had like a Big Ten Classic game on. And my wife called and she's like, hey, when did you play? And I'm like, oh, man, that's me up there. And AJ came in the room and he's like, that's that. He was all excited and he was jumping around and couldn't believe it. So I don't have a moment that I necessarily share with them. Not yet, you know what I mean? But I definitely, I think 2001 Penn State game would probably be one of my most proud moments, just because of, it's right after 9/11, like a couple of weeks. And I remember that was really my first game playing back on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. So I had some family that was able to make it. Friends came up from DC from college and from their colleges. And I remember being terrified to fly, you know what I mean? And so I imagine, I'm growing up in the household of an airline mechanic who, we flew. If we need to get somewhere, we were able to use that buddy pass system and fly. And now all of a sudden, this terrible thing happens. Coach kind of addresses it. He talks to us about it. He, checks on us. But there's just kind of it's just this eerie day, right? Like, I remember walking on Library Mall and hearing it on the radio at a smoothie stand. I'm like, what? I have family that work in the city. And so it was this eerie kind of day. But the response to it, I think, was something that I would never forget, and so being able to go to Penn State and then, walking across the field and shaking hands with guys, not captains, but shaking hands with guys before the game, to me meant a lot, right? It was like, wow, this is some things are just bigger than there's things are just bigger than what's in the moment right now. And this is one of those times. And so I felt like a tremendous sense of pride there. And in that moment, just the response to 9/11, how people started to come together and really, kind of put differences to the side. And then, Pearl Harbor, I think, was a very emotional trip for me, and that was really, really cool thing too. So I do plan on talking to my son about it. He's a history buff, so he really loves history. So I'm excited to be able to share some of that stuff with him.
Yeah. So if one of your kids came to you and said they wanted, well, I guess it would be your son, follow in your footsteps and play college football,
Mhm.
what's the first piece of advice you'd give him?
I would tell him to make sure that he's committed to it, and then once you're committed to it, then give everything you have. You know what I mean? And that's what it takes to be a college football player. And I will say now it's a little different, because of transfer portal and NIL
Yeah.
and all that stuff is very very different game. But at the end of the day, you want to go do this. What is it going to take for you to be successful in doing this? What type of conditioning is it going to take? What type of diet is
Yep.
it going to take? What type of rest and work habits do you need to have? How do you study film? How do there's all these different things that, I wish I would have knew going into um, being a college
Yeah.
football player. And I would tell him to make sure he understands and is ready to commit to it. So,
So the fatherly light advice kind of leads me into my final two questions here. I always ask the same final two questions. So if your kids somehow one day come across this interview when they're older, what is one piece of advice that you would want them to take away from it?
just that, you aren't always dealt. Um, Sometimes you don't have a control over the circumstances around you, but you can always control how you respond to them. You can control how you show up every day. You can control the type of work ethic that you bring. You can control the type of commitment you bring, and you can control how you treat other people. You can control, you can show up and be a blessing to other people. You can show up and be a good teammate or a good neighbor, or you can choose not to. So my advice would be to never lose, never strip yourself or lose the power um, to do things and to respond to things and to be the driver and creating and molding the life that you want to live. A lot of it is going to be dependent on how you show up, how you interact with things, how you interact with people, what type of preparation you put into your coursework or into practices or into whatever it is that you're doing. Everything begins with you.
Yep.
you know
It's a great piece of advice. And then we wouldn't be the Badger if we didn't talk a little bit of Badger sports here. How do you think the Badgers are going to finish this year, or how do you think they're going to be the next couple years? Whichever one you want to answer, whichever one's easier for you to answer.
Damn, man, that's a tough one, man. This has been a painful. This is a painful
Yeah.
season, man. I mean, it's painful. Just the only way I can say it, without dropping F-bombs and other worse words. I think we got a lot of room to grow. It's very hard for me to look at sometimes. I'm a diehard fan. I bleed for the guys in that locker room. But I will say, given this new era of football, it's hard to even keep up with who's on the team anymore. It's like, you go from watching, you watch it as an alumni, right? Like, you watch a team, you understand exactly what they're going through in training camp and transitioning here to the first game. And maybe there's a few things different with different coaching regimes, but for the most part, you watch some of these guys come in and then you see, some of them, red shirt and sit for a while. And next thing you know, they get their break and they do well. And you kind of feel like you're growing with those guys. So you're reliving things. And now it's just like this kind of carousel open
Yeah.
door and guys in and out. And you're like, okay, who the heck is that? So I'm going to the roster and Googling, where do we get this
Yeah.
guy from? So that's a little
Yeah.
different in that regard as a fan. But in terms of the current state, I think we're in deep trouble. I think that the things that make Wisconsin a great program or made Wisconsin a great program are things that are becoming less common now, right? And so if you look at some of the great programs, right, I think of like in the last, 10 years or so, you look at, you got Alabama, of course, you got your Clemsons, you have your Georgias. Some of those programs really are not different in terms of philosophically than in Wisconsin. The difference is, in Alabama is getting a consistent 4 and 5 star guys, but they're developing those guys over time.
Yep.
right? And like there was a picture I saw of like one of the Alabama running back rooms, and it had like 5
Yeah.
NFL running
Yeah.
backs in the room. That same picture today, none of those guys, 3 of those guys would have left and went and hit
Right.
the portal, right? And so the developmental programs are really struggling now, and I think that some of these coaches figured that out, and they got out before it. Like this is, the talent is going to start to disperse itself because of NIL. So it's hard to see Wisconsin try to find its identity in this time. And I know that, coming in with that air raid offense, I was very hopeful that it would somehow turn around and stick, but it was just didn't pan out. So very difficult time for us. I don't know if I see us. I don't know how we're going to do the rest of the season. At this point, my hopes aren't high, but I want us to be able to, I want to at least see some improvement. I want to see some tenacity. I want to see some fire and some fight. So we need to find our identity, and we need to get back to doing some of the things that we're built to do. From a recruiting philosophy, we need a better strategy. I'm seeing a lot of Wisconsin in-state kids leaving Wisconsin, which is, that would have never happened with Alvey. Would have never happened. With Bielema or even Chris. They kept talent in state.
Yeah.
So I don't know if coaches, so I'd like to see us make sure that we're still cultivating those relationships with in-state coaches. It's a super important part of the program.
Yeah.
I'd love to see us continue, to bring a philosophy to ourselves. You know what I mean? We're just kind of, the portal has made recruiting all over the place. So it's like, who's in there, who's available. Let's see what we can get.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see us use more strategy and intention. Well, who are we bringing in? What do we want to accomplish with the guys that we're bringing in here? And I'd like to see a little bit more of that, a little bit more tenacity and toughness. And I'd like to see us get our identity back somehow. I don't know how. I wish I had a better answer.
Yeah.
But it's looking nasty right now. It's looking real nasty. My expectation would be, hopefully if we can show some promise this year, can we find some guys that can show enough of a spark or show enough promise that we can build upon? Can we implement a scheme that we can build upon? That there has to be some type of basis or identity to how we're attacking teams on offense.
Yeah.
So,
and that's my biggest thing too. Right now is like, okay, you don't have to go after every single in-state guy for Wisconsin, but you need to still get the top guys from Wisconsin. Like you still need those offensive linemen from Wisconsin. So
yeah, I couldn't believe, I don't know if it was Ohio State. I was watching, or Michigan. I couldn't remember. One of their teams has a starting offensive lineman from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how in the hell did that happen?
My cousin actually used to be an offensive lineman for Wisconsin. He transferred to Indiana his last year when they tried to bring in that dairy raid offense. So, I don't know if guys just see that they don't have that classic Wisconsin identity on offense right now, and they're just like, I don't want to, I don't want to block for this school or what.
I don't know, but to me, it's like, if you have a pedigree, right? It's kind of like, your corners and your receivers at O State, right? Like they have a pedigree, they have a brand, right? So they're not going to have problems finding receivers there based off the success of. So, we offensive linemen is part of our pedigree, right? Like we should be able to recruit in-state. Are you kidding me? We should be, those guys should be kicking down the doors to come here. Like, why wouldn't you want to go here and have the opportunity to develop into an NFL starter eventually, right? Yeah. Like the track record can prove itself. So it's really mind blowing to see that we're losing in-state talent there. And then, just the performance of the guys sometimes is like, okay, this is not talent. Some of this is coaching. You know what I mean? Yeah. We can't block a 2-man stunt with 3 people.
Yeah.
Right. Like, come on, what are we doing here? So anyway, I don't want to get down. I don't want to start going off on rants, man, because that will extend our time
I was gonna
significantly.
say,
Yeah.
we could sit here all day, and I don't want to take up any more of your time since we've had our issues today.
It's all good.
So, Anthony, thank you for sharing your journey with us. Words of advice, really appreciate it. To our listeners, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, like, comment, share with a fellow Badger fan. As always, on Wisconsin. Thanks again, Anthony.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. On Wisconsin, go Badgers.